In the quiet shadows of the mountains, where the wind whispers through the pines, a boy once laughed freely, unaware of the horrors that awaited him. Tanjiro Kamado's life began with warmth, simple joys, and the love of family, a fragile sanctuary built of care and laughter. But fate has a cruel way of unraveling the threads of happiness, leaving only cold ash in its place. His story is not just one of loss, but of relentless suffering, a descent into darkness that would shape every heartbeat, every decision, and every scar upon his soul. From the very beginning, Tanjiro was forced to shoulder burdens no child should ever know. The sudden death of his family, the violent cruelty that shattered his world in one night, left a wound that could never truly heal. In those moments, he learned that kindness does not always protect, and innocence is often the first casualty in the war of life. The world he had trusted, the warmth he had cherished, became a prison of grief that tested the very core of his being. Yet within this pain, a flame flickered, a determination, fragile but unyielding. Tanjiro's suffering was not merely an endless storm, it was the forge in which his soul was tempered. Each tear shed, each scream unheard, molded him into someone who could endure the unbearable. But endurance came at a cost. The boy who once smiled freely began to harden, his heart carrying both the weight of grief and the cold steel of resolve. His journey was a relentless series of betrayals by fate itself. Friends lost, enemies too cruel to comprehend, and the merciless march of demons that took everything he held dear. Pain became his teacher, suffering his companion, and fear his constant shadow. With every loss, the fire in his eyes burned brighter, yet it was no longer just warmth, it was a cold, unwavering determination to survive and protect what little remained. And so, Tanjiro Kamado walks the path of shadows, a boy forged by grief, sculpted by agony, and tempered in the endless night of human suffering. His story is not a tale of victory, but a meditation on pain, on how cruelty and loss can transform a heart, how love and hope are both fragile and indestructible. This is the story of a soul battered by fate, yet unbroken, a boy whose life was stolen, and who rose from the ruins with eyes that no longer shine with naive warmth, but with the icy clarity of one who has seen the abyss. 1. The murder of his family. Nothing can shatter innocence like the sudden, violent loss of those you love. Tanjiro awoke to a nightmare no child should ever witness, his home, once filled with laughter and warmth, drowned in blood. The horror of that night was not only in the act of murder, but in the helplessness he felt as he cradled the lifeless bodies of his family. Every corner of that house whispered memories of joy now forever tainted. The boy who had once found joy in simple tasks, sweeping the floor, helping his mother cook, laughing with his siblings, now faced an empty silence. The grief was immediate, raw, and consuming, like a fire that would never extinguish. Each heartbeat became a reminder of the warmth that had been stolen from him. Even as he screamed into the night, there was no comfort, no justice, only the cold realization that life could end abruptly, and pain could arrive unbidden. This night of terror carved the first scar into Tanjiro's soul. It was the crucible that would define the rest of his journey. The laughter of the past became a phantom, haunting him in quiet moments, while the knowledge of human cruelty settled deep in his chest. The warmth of childhood was gone, replaced by an unrelenting sorrow that would drive him into a world where survival demanded more than innocence ever could. 2. Watching Nezuko transform into a demon. After surviving the massacre, Tanjiro faced a new horror. His beloved sister, Nezuko, was transformed into a demon. The little girl he had protected, played with, and adored now carried a curse that made her a threat to the very people she loved. The terror of seeing her lose humanity was a torment unlike any other, leaving Tanjiro helpless against the cruel twist of fate. Even as he vowed to protect her, a part of him mourned for the sister who would never speak, laugh, or grow like the child she once was. Every memory of their shared past became a bittersweet ache, a constant reminder that life could be stolen not only by death but by transformation. The bond he cherished was now entwined with danger and fear, forcing him to balance love and survival in ways that no human should. This was the moment Tanjiro first learned that love and loss could coexist, that caring for someone could demand unbearable sacrifice. His pain became compounded by responsibility, as he bore the weight of her safety and humanity, knowing that one wrong move could end her life, or worse, his own. In protecting Nezuko, he began to cultivate a resilience forged by necessity and heartbreak. 3. The harsh training to become a demon slayer. To avenge his family and protect Nezuko, Tanjiro had to submit to training so brutal it would have broken many. Every muscle, every breath, every drop of sweat was an assault on his body and mind. The physical pain was relentless, but the psychological burden was even heavier, as he wrestled with guilt, fear, and the lingering memories of his family. His instructors demanded perfection, leaving no room for hesitation. Every failure was a mirror reflecting his own inadequacy, every success a fleeting relief before the next trial began. The intensity of the training forced him to confront his limits and push beyond, but it also left him isolated, forging a cold determination that hardened his soul. Through this crucible, Tanjiro began to understand the cruel truth of the world he had stepped into: mercy and innocence are luxuries in a realm of demons and death. The boy who once embodied warmth and empathy now carried within him the steely resolve of someone who had seen the consequences of weakness. His heart was still compassionate, but the edges were sharpened by pain, prepared for the horrors ahead. 4. Losing friends and allies. Even amidst allies, Tanjiro's path was strewn with loss. Comrades he came to trust, people who offered glimpses of hope and companionship, were often cut down, leaving him to navigate the world alone. Each death left a mark on his psyche, a painful reminder that attachment carries both joy and devastating grief. These losses were more than strategic setbacks, they were emotional earthquakes. Tanjiro experienced the helplessness of being unable to save those who mattered, the cruel irony of fighting so hard yet still witnessing death. With every loss, he became more guarded, more aware that love could also be the source of pain, and that his own emotions were a vulnerability in a world ruled by cruelty. The cumulative effect of these tragedies slowly chipped away at his naive optimism. He learned to steel himself, to hide his fear and sorrow behind determination. This was not the beginning of coldness, but the shaping of a heart that could endure the unbearable and continue moving forward, even when every step was painful. 5. The weight of responsibility for Nezuko. Being responsible for Nezuko's survival was a burden unlike any other. Tanjiro could not allow himself moments of weakness, her life was a constant priority, and failure meant unspeakable consequences. The pressure forced him to make impossible choices, to balance moral ideals against harsh realities. Every encounter with demons carried the fear that Nezuko could be harmed or that her humanity might slip further. This constant vigilance created a tension that never left him, a gnawing anxiety that became as familiar as his own heartbeat. The weight of responsibility became a silent, unending torment. Over time, this responsibility transformed Tanjiro. He learned discipline, strategic thinking, and emotional restraint, but at the cost of his innocence. The warmth and carefree nature of childhood were replaced with an awareness that the world is merciless, and that love often comes hand in hand with unbearable pressure. 6. Encountering cruel and ruthless demons. The demons Tanjiro faced were more than opponents, they were embodiments of cruelty, tragedy, and the darkest aspects of existence. Each battle left him physically scarred, mentally strained, and emotionally shaken. They were reminders that suffering could come in endless forms, and that not all pain could be mitigated by strength or courage alone. Many of these demons had stories that mirrored the suffering of humans, making their attacks even more heart-wrenching. Tanjiro's empathy meant he could feel their pain even as he struck them down, a burden few could bear without breaking. This duality, killing while empathizing, intensified his inner conflict, forcing him to suppress parts of his natural kindness to survive. Facing relentless brutality hardened his spirit. He retained compassion, but he began to cultivate a necessary coldness, a tactical detachment that allowed him to endure battles that would have broken lesser hearts. His journey was no longer just about survival, it was about mastering himself amidst chaos and cruelty. 7. The death of mentor figures. Mentors are meant to guide, protect, and inspire, but Tanjiro's journey was marked by their loss. Each teacher, each experienced ally who imparted wisdom, eventually faced mortality, leaving him without guidance in moments when he needed it most. The grief of losing mentors compounded the pain of his earlier tragedies, layering trauma upon trauma. The emotional impact was profound. With each death, Tanjiro was forced to internalize lessons in real time, often learning too late the wisdom that could have saved lives. The absence of guidance left a vacuum of uncertainty, and the weight of making life-or-death decisions without their counsel added pressure that would test even the strongest soul. Yet, from this loss emerged resilience. Tanjiro absorbed their teachings and transformed grief into determination, carrying the memory of mentors in every strike, every choice, and every act of courage. The pain of losing them was immense, but it became another tool in forging a heart that could survive, endure, and continue moving forward in a world devoid of mercy. 8. Facing unimaginable loss on the battlefield. Tanjiro's path as a demon slayer exposed him to endless bloodshed. Every mission, every fight meant witnessing death, friends, innocence, and even demons with tragic pasts falling before his eyes. Each loss was a punch to the heart, a reminder that life is fragile and often cruel. Pain became his constant companion, a shadow that followed him even in moments of quiet. The battlefield did not allow for mourning. Tanjiro had to fight while carrying grief, suppress tears while protecting others, and act decisively even when his soul screamed in anguish. This forced emotional suppression was like a slow erosion of his warmth, leaving behind a focus sharpened by sorrow and tempered by necessity. Through these battles, Tanjiro learned that survival often required more than courage, it demanded resilience, clarity, and the cold acceptance of fate's cruelty. The boy who once embodied hope and joy began to grow into someone who could endure the unbearable, even as his heart silently ached with each death he could not prevent. 9. Witnessing the destruction of innocence. Every demon Tanjiro faced had often begun life as an innocent soul, transformed by suffering or evil. Watching this twisted transformation mirrored his own loss and forced him to confront the fragility of life. The stark contrast between who these beings were and what they had become haunted him endlessly. This reflection of stolen innocence was unbearable. Tanjiro empathized deeply, feeling both sorrow and rage, sorrow for the lives corrupted and rage at the cruelty of fate. Each encounter chipped away at the simplicity of his past, slowly reshaping his heart into something more guarded, more aware of the darkness that could invade any life. Yet even as innocence was destroyed around him, Tanjiro learned the painful value of empathy in combat. He became someone who could fight ruthlessly without losing his moral compass, but the cost was a subtle coldness that tempered his otherwise burning compassion. His heart was resilient but scarred, capable of great love yet prepared for inevitable pain. 10. Facing his own mortality. Time and again, Tanjiro faced death directly, in battle, in injury, in the shadow of overwhelming demons. Each brush with mortality was a visceral reminder that life is fragile, fleeting, and unforgiving. The fear of dying while failing those he loved added layers of existential pain to his already burdened heart. These moments forced introspection. Tanjiro had to reconcile with the possibility of leaving Nezuko alone, with a world that had already stolen so much from him. The weight of mortality sharpened his focus but also carved deeper emotional scars, leaving him with a persistent awareness of the cost of survival. Through this, Tanjiro's resilience grew. He learned to fight not just with strength, but with heart, strategy, and unyielding determination. But the boy who once approached life with unreserved hope now carried the quiet knowledge that each day was a battle against fate itself, and that pain was an inseparable part of living. 11. Watching his enemies suffer too. Tanjiro's empathy extended even to those he fought, including demons who were once human. Witnessing their pain, regret, and lingering humanity was a torment. Each enemy he struck down carried a story of suffering that mirrored his own, amplifying the weight on his heart. He grappled with the contradiction of empathy and duty. To survive and protect, he had to defeat them, yet every act of violence reverberated through his conscience. It was a lesson in the harshest morality: compassion alone cannot prevent cruelty, and sometimes survival requires hard choices that break the heart. Through this, Tanjiro's emotional depth grew, but so did the edges of coldness around it. The boy who once embraced the world unguarded learned to compartmentalize sorrow, focusing on the mission while quietly mourning the lives lost, enemies and allies alike. 12. The isolation of his journey. The path Tanjiro walked was lonely. Even among comrades, few could truly understand the depth of his grief and responsibility. His bond with Nezuko was a rare solace, but otherwise, the journey forced him into solitude, both physically and emotionally. Loneliness was a constant companion, making victories feel hollow and setbacks unbearable. The weight of being different, carrying a demon sibling, facing extraordinary pain, and confronting relentless cruelty, set him apart. Isolation deepened his resilience but also hardened his emotional boundaries. This solitude became a crucible of character. Tanjiro's warmth persisted, but it was filtered through a lens of caution, self-reliance, and an inner strength forged from enduring pain alone. His heart had room for love, but he now bore the knowledge that attachment could mean vulnerability. 13. Witnessing endless cruelty. Tanjiro's eyes were open to a world where suffering often seemed random and senseless. Human cruelty, demonic violence, and the merciless hand of fate revealed that injustice was not rare, it was pervasive. Every atrocity he witnessed left a mark, deepening his understanding of the world's darkness. The repeated exposure to such cruelty challenged his moral and emotional endurance. Tanjiro had to navigate a balance between hope and despair, holding on to light in a world that seemed determined to snuff it out. Each act of violence, each innocent harmed, carved emotional scars he could never erase. This relentless exposure forged a tempered heart. While he retained empathy and love, Tanjiro developed a necessary coldness, an inner shield to survive in a world where compassion alone could leave one broken and defeated. Tanjiro Kamado's story is a testament to the cruel beauty of endurance. His life, marked by relentless tragedy, reminds us that suffering is often the forge of strength. The boy who faced unimaginable loss, violence, and betrayal emerged not unbroken, but profoundly transformed, his heart a balance of empathy and unyielding resolve. His pain was both personal and universal. Through the loss of family, the transformation of Nezuko, and the trials of countless battles, Tanjiro experienced the full spectrum of grief, responsibility, and the harsh lessons of mortality. Each scar on his body and soul tells a story of resilience, courage, and the unshakable will to protect. Yet amidst the darkness, a quiet light remains. Tanjiro's warmth, though tempered by tragedy, continues to guide him. His compassion survives alongside his cold determination, proving that suffering does not necessarily destroy humanity, it can also refine it, making empathy sharper, courage deeper, and love more profound. His journey reminds us that the heart is resilient, capable of enduring unimaginable pain without losing its essence. Tanjiro's story is a meditation on survival, sacrifice, and the indomitable spirit that can rise even when the world seeks to crush it. It is a reminder that even in darkness, there is purpose, and even through suffering, there is meaning. Tanjiro Kamado walks forward, scarred but unbroken, a symbol of endurance and quiet strength. His life is a narrative of pain transformed into resolve, of innocence reshaped into wisdom, and of love tempered by the harshest lessons of existence. In understanding his journey, we glimpse the profound truth that suffering, while cruel, can also illuminate the strength, courage, and humanity that reside within us all.